too much listen to what all these people say just to know.
Good evening, everyone. If we could come to order, please, to call this January 9th, 2019 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission to order. I'd like to welcome everyone and Happy New Year to you. If everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record reflect that all commissioners, with the exception of Mr. Christie and Mr. Schexnayder, are present. Can we get staff introductions?
Stacy Webb, Secretary for the Planning Commission.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Can't hear you.
Eric Poche, Parish Planner.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official.
Sean Schroe, Engineering Review Agency.
All right, thank you. That'll move on to item number 5 is the chairman's comment. The chair is going to defer to Mr. Fournier to give us an update on the master land use plan. Mr. Fournier.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the commission, tonight we have a special presentation to you related to the CPEX master land use plan, and that is from Mr. Jeff Burse with HNTB. When we first entered into this plan, we knew that the parish was also conducting a master transportation plan, and that master transportation plan will hopefully dovetail and will dovetail into the master land use plan. There's a lot of discussion about infrastructure and having infrastructure in place. I wanted to give the commission and members of the audience some information about what we're looking at in terms of transportation infrastructure. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jeff Burse with HNTB, and have Marshall cue up the slide presentation. All right, thank you.
Mr. Burse, thank you for being here tonight.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you all very much. As Jerome said, my name is Jeff Burse. I'm with HNTB. We have been assigned the task of developing a long-range master transportation plan for Ascension Parish. On a parallel track, CPEX is also developing a master long-range land use plan. And as you know, land use and transportation have to go hand in hand and be somewhat symbiotic. On a third track, HNTB and my exact role is to oversee, along with the Ascension Department of Transportation, Mr. Mike Enlow, the Move Ascension program. That's more in the immediate. But right now, Jerome has asked me to come, and Kip Strauss with our office is actually leading this effort, but to give you all a very high-level overview of where the transportation long-range master plan is. And what we have is broken up into 3 phases. Phase 1, which is already complete, is the needs. You know, what are the needs of the parish with regard to transportation, with regard to what are the existing situations, conditions, safety, widths, shoulders, are they up to standard? Where's the congestion? Where's the economic development and growth happening? Where's the population growth? Things like that. We also use a lot of the data from the Capital Region Planning Commission's travel demand model and mesh that into what we're doing. We're now moving into, and we've had several public meetings on that, now moving into phase 2, which you can see is what we call the solutions phase. Went out to the public and said, we've identified these as needs, give us your feedback, and took note of that. Now what we did is we created basically a universe of alternatives of what's possible, and then start a screening process through there. And we're continuing that effort and using what we look for as far as what we might use as solutions to problems in the future, and running it through the CRPC's traffic demand model and modeling that in conjunction with the scenarios for CPEX's land use. That's where we are right now. And in February next month, we're going to be going back out to the public with a lot more information and some projects identified. This just came out, and I'll just hit this real quickly. You actually have a larger version in front of you of this. After the needs phase 1, a fact sheet came out to summarize the 100 and something plus page report, and just kind of highlights a little bit of the safety, congestion, where the traffic and some of the multimodal benefits can go. Like I said, we're now in the solutions, and we heard from the public, what are the goals? What are you looking for? You're looking for safety, congestion relief, you're looking for multimodal, you're looking to move freight, and we took all that and boiled it down into 10 specific categories to then vet and go through a prioritization tool. Again, like I said, we're working with CPEX. This is their master land use plan. They've held several public meetings. I think they're going to hold another one later this month. And what we're doing is we're sharing our information with them and vice versa so that we can model our transportation projections with their land use scenarios. So we've broken it down into 4 basic categories of safety capacity, new facilities, multimodal, and freight. And then you have a larger map of this because I know it's hard to see over here in front of you in your packet. But these, you can see, it's 42 safety and capacity possible projects that will then go through a second level of screening that we may propose for in the future. And we're talking not to move Ascension, which is the right now. We're talking long range and into the future. A lot of roadways that need to have added capacity, intersection improvements for safety, and projects like that. The second one is the new connections that don't exist right now that can help move flow through and across the parish. Because what we're trying to do is create a network of north, south, east, west corridors so we can gather traffic and move them a little more efficiently, like I said, through and across the parish. Because they did a study and saw that not everybody's just going to work and leaving the parish. Sometimes they're just going across the parish. And so that's important too, is to provide those connections. Nationwide, we're seeing that multimodal is sweeping the nation in multi aspects. Ascension's not there yet. Maybe they're looking to go in that direction. Maybe not in 5 years, but maybe in 10, maybe in 20, 30. And so we're looking at those options as well, and everything that's not just in a car, but also multimodal. That can include not just pedestrian, but also transit and other things like that. And of course, freight. That's a big industry, here, and how we're going to move these goods and services. And we've identified some areas that can truly help move the trucks, move the freights through and across the parish, and where they need to go to really help promote not just intrastate, but interstate commerce. So these are a lot of the projects that are identified. They'll go through further screening. We're working with CRPC and their model. And then we're going to bring that back out to the public, get feedback, and further refine before we write up the plan for passage in front of the council. Like I said, next steps is to continue building the solutions. Once we have that, prioritize, look at some financing strategies over the long term, maybe in buckets of 10-year groupings, and then how would we accomplish that, and then come back to the parish for possible adoption. Again, we're going to go out to the parish and have in the public next month and have a larger presentation. I just took a few slides out to really highlight, where we're at and where we're looking to go, just to kind of brief y'all as Jerome had asked us to, as you're also hearing about the land use, that we're doing this in tandem with them as well. And with that, that's kind of the very high-level overview, but I'm willing to entertain any questions you may have.
Any questions from the commissioners?
I've got a couple. Thank you for your presentation. As far as, I know y'all emphasize connectivity, and I know you're not doing the master plan, but just to make sure we're looking at that when we do the master plan and emphasizing subdivision connectivity when we're looking at the plan. I know that becomes an issue sometimes, and that helps with the creation of the corridors. I also know, traffic, the master plan and drainage was all kind of go together, and I think HTMB was also supposed to do a drainage impact study as well. Are y'all
That's
working
correct.
on that also? And
Yes, sir.
what's kind of the plan with that, or is that still in the works? Or?
We have some recommendations put before the Drainage Board, and they're contemplating some of the recommendations so that we'll take those decisions that they go with and then continue to model in that direction once we get that feedback.
Okay, and is that all going to be done about the same time, the drainage, the traffic, and the master plan? So it's all built on each other?
The Transportation Master Plan and CPEX's Master Land Use Plan are working hand in hand. I think they're going further development with their plan. Master Transportation Plan has been should be finished by the end of this spring. Floodplain management plan, and that should be done supposedly. I think the contract extends to the end of the year. I don't think they're going to need all of that time.
All right, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Burst. I appreciate all the work that y'all doing. It looks great.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep. All right, item number 6 is a public comment on any agenda item. If you signed up to speak on any of the public hearings, certainly you'll have your time to speak during that. But if there's any other agenda item that you would like to speak on, this is the time to do it. Ms. Stacy, is anyone signed up?
Yes. Catherine Gobble.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. One of the things that I want to mention about the master plan that is taking place right now, we went out and hired urban planners. Urban means high-density development. So they came back to us with their concept of an urbanization of Ascension Parish. And that's really not what the people in Ascension Parish want. But it's being crammed down our throats. Now, the director of planning and department, Mr. Fournier, asked me after the last public meeting, well, Ms. Catherine, can you support our plan? And I had to honestly tell him no. The gentleman that just spoke from HNTB, they had a master transportation plan, and I don't know how much we paid for it, about 12 years ago. It just sat on a shelf. Our current master plan has been sitting on a shelf. You don't pay attention to it. We're paying a lot of money, $800,000 to HNTB for this master transportation plan, another $450,000 to CPEX for the master transportation plan. But we're getting studies, but we're not getting anything done. We're not getting a plan that we can actually put into place. There's three things that were in the original master plan that are very important for us to be looking at, and we're not paying attention to them. The first is the carrying capacity of the land. That means what the land can sustain itself, whether it's wetlands, whether it's not, what's currently there, how much more can we put there. The second is the parish's financial ability to pay for all this infrastructure. I'll be very interested in what the plan is. I'm sure it'll be a good plan, but the parish doesn't have billions of dollars to pay to build these roads. You mentioned the drainage, and you asked about the drainage, Mr. Chasson. That particular study is finished, and it is stuck in the Drainage Committee. They won't discuss it because there's some problems with current things that are going on that the parish is doing, and they don't want to allow that drainage study to go forward and get into place because then they won't be able to do what they want to do. So we're being hijacked by the Drainage Committee. The third thing that we need to pay attention to is what's the desire of the people for the parish? Not urban planners that are in Texas or Colorado or any other place, but what do the citizens of Ascension Parish want? Not just what you all want, not just what the developers want, but what the citizens want. You've got citizens here tonight that are going to speak to you about what they want for their area, and I hope you listen to them. I really thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Teresa Robert.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us speak again. I signed a card in support tonight because we had a discussion last time, you saying that we are opposed to a new plan or redoing our plan or updating our plan. People are not opposed to updating. We're not opposed to making our parish the best that it can be. Ms. Catherine said it best of all. We are literally discussing whether or not we want our parish to remain suburban or we want to go to urbanize it and become a big city like Baton Rouge and New Orleans. I continue to speak to people and neighbors and friends throughout this parish. Our biggest concern, again, is that they've had 3 meetings and they're tripling densities. Right now we have the 1, 2, and 3 houses per acre, unless you go into a section where you have apartments and stuff, and we're adding in 4.5 and 9.6 houses per acre. People of this parish live here because they want a little bit of rural, they want a little bit of property. Those that don't want property, we do afford some of those things here. We live, I'm glad to hear that they're updating or they're looking at the transportation. That's certainly what has come out at every public hearing is the fact that we do not have adequate infrastructure here. We literally are locked in traffic no matter where we go in this parish. We literally have substandard roads throughout the entire parish. And it's nice to hear that, but we've been made, this promise has been made to us for many times over the years. When we did our last master plan, we continue to do that, but yet we're still trying to push high densities. Again, we just ask, let's get our infrastructure in place, let's take care of our drainage plans, and then if you want to come up and triple density, then you can come back to the people, and if their infrastructure's in place, I don't think that they will fight it. But we do not have the infrastructure. We've been, as again, we were promised when they built and y'all permitted all of these subdivisions that the builders were going to add lanes in and roads and whatever. They were going to improve our infrastructure, and that is not what has happened. It has been the exact opposite.
Have we approved anything? In fact, this was a big debate last month that we required infrastructure improvements out by where you live, off of Highway 44 for a subdivision, and they don't have the infrastructure improvements, and that the expansion of that subdivision has not happened at all. A lot of the subdivisions we've approved have been conditioned upon infrastructure improvements where they're needed, and if they don't get them, if the developers aren't putting in the infrastructure improvement, then they're not going to get approved. I mean, we have not backed down on that at all.
We were very pleased to see you stand up for that last month, but that is not what you normally do. That is very out of the ordinary. Several of the things that you've put on permits with subdivisions, you've been asking them to do things that you cannot legally enforce. And we're very encouraged when you did that. We're just asking you again, continue doing that. Put the people and the community first. Demand it of developers. Demand things that they can do and that they have to do. And again, we're just still for years, y'all have permitted and permitted and permitted, and you tell us, oh, we can't do anything about the highways. Most of them are state highways, and then the state tells us we can't prohibit them from continuing the building. So we're just asking, I guess, don't put the cart before the horse. Y'all
I think a lot of it's changed over the past couple of years, especially with the traffic impact studies that give us more leverage to make sure infrastructure improvements get in because what the parish council has mandated. And from what I can tell, I made the motion on the subdivision 3 years ago, or now it's more than 3 years ago in 2015. I didn't back down from it then, and I'm not backing down from it now, and I don't think we have done that. To do that. So
it is the one and only one that you've stood up and done, and there are people across this entire parish that can say that. I hope this is a new beginning, and I hope that's what you're going to continue to do, and I encourage you to do that. Thank you.
That's it? Okay. Moving on then to our new way of meeting, doing our staff reports at the beginning of the meeting, as we discussed last week. So we'll go on to staff. Mr. Fournier, you have a staff report for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, under the item staff report on the agenda, we have an item A titled Consideration of a Public Hearing to recommend to the Parish Council an amendment to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Section 1745H, pertaining to preliminary plat procedures. This was brought up at the last meeting where we were asking developers, the language currently reads, if a subdivider does not submit the final plat and construction plans within 6 months, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall have the right to rescind approval of the preliminary plat. The Engineering Review Agency shall be responsible for notifying the Planning Commission of any subdividers that fail to submit construction plans within 6 months duration. Notification shall be in the form of a status update report presented on a regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting. All right.
Speak closer into the microphone. People are having problems hearing.
I'm sorry. I thought I was speaking into it. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
What we'd like to do is, instead of saying consideration of a public hearing two, we'd like to just have the Planning Commission recommend a change to the council to modify that, and we'd eliminate the words final plat. And the reason for that is that that language, final plat, was placed in the development code when we were allowing performance bonds for subdivision developers. And for the audience's sake, a performance bond was a bond that the developer could post that would allow them to have the final plat approved prior to have certain pieces of infrastructure in place. In a lot of cases, they were putting a performance bond together before they would put the sewer plant in. What we ended up doing, with your recommendation and recommendation to the council, we eliminated the possibility of developers using performance bonds. Now they have to have everything complete before we'd consider a final plat approval, all right? So what we'd like to do is continue having them submit their construction plans within 6 months, but we'd eliminate the need to have the final plat submitted within 6 months, because in a lot of cases, we don't know what that final plat's going to look like. There may have been minor changes to the project during the course of construction. A lot may have changed a little bit one way or the other. A couple of small minor things within the project might have changed, and it's a little bit onerous on them to submit the final plat, especially when that's going to be changed at the time the final plat is approved. So we'd make the recommendation to council that they would remove the language, the final plat, and leave the remaining language in place. Right?
All right, so you'd like a motion to set that for a public hearing at the next meeting?
Now, I'd just like a recommendation from the Planning Commission right now directly to the council, and we can do the public hearing at the council stage during the modification of the ordinance. Right?
Does anybody have any questions about that?
Can we do that?
Yes. We checked with legal counsel, and yes, that he recommended that would be the path to go.
In that case, I'll make the motion.
All right, I got a motion by Mr. Dumas, second by Mr. Bishop.
Just so we're clear, so the motion is to remove the language that says final plat and from 17405H. That's right? That's
correct, Mr. Chesson, yes.
All right.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Is that all, Mr. Fournier, for your staff report?
That's all we have in our
All
staff.
right, and then engineering staff report on our subdivision status as of January 2019. Please speak into the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, you have in your packet a list that was put together because last month you asked us to give you status updates on the projects. This was with relation to submission of final plats and construction drawings. The list that you have in front of you, you can see has a category for final plat submitted. What was put on there were projects that have not submitted the final plat. We put the location, the subdivision name, the date the preliminary plat was approved, the number of lots, the construction documents, submittal and approval dates, and the current status of the projects. We did that, as I said, because of the questions that you guys had last month. I gave Mr. Pryor an updated version as discussions moved forward as to conditions that would be placed on preliminary plats. And we can update this and, of course, send it to the commissioners tomorrow. That also lists conditions on for the final plats that were put in place on the preliminary plats of a lot of these subdivisions. What we would ask is that if there's anything that you guys want to see that's not on there or that you think is unnecessary, to let us know, because we want to craft this report so that it is as informative to you guys as possible.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
One of the things, we had 2 phone calls today from citizens stating that a couple of projects that were missing off the initial list, and that's why we prepared the updated list for you today. One in particular was the Oak Lake subdivision. We placed that on the list. We'd be happy to make this list available to the public if they'd ask, and give me a call or send me an email. I'd be happy to provide the list to them. All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You have a project here on the list. It's sitting 2 years out, and has there been any activity on it?
Which project?
Ascension Business Park?
The Ascension Business Park was the one we brought up last month, that they hadn't done anything, and you guys requested that either the developer or the consultant come tonight to explain what they were planning on doing. And basically, unless they request an extension and you grant it to them, the preliminary plat will automatically be rescinded, since they have not started construction, and the 2-year deadline will pass, I think, on the 11th of January.
Yeah, in 2 days.
Yes, that's correct.
Did when you asked them to come, anybody show up? I mean, did they tell you they were coming? Is anybody here?
Mr. Murphy was here last month for another project. He said he was going to address it with his client, but I don't see him here. So apparently they're not desiring to move forward.
I don't see Mr. Murphy here. Derek Murphy, are you here and hiding somewhere?
He called me earlier today, and he is not going to be present tonight, and we have not heard anything from him related to that project.
So the options at this point are we either make a motion to rescind or it just goes away.
You don't have to make a motion for anything unless you grant him he requests and you grant him an extension. It will automatically be rescinded.
Yeah. So this in 2 days will be gone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at all these projects, and it looks like they're in various stages of well, some of them are in various stages of construction or review, with the exception of the Ascension Business Park, which looks like there's been nothing going on. Perhaps the other ones, we have Christie Place. The preliminary plat was approved in February, or no, I'm sorry. May. I'm looking at the wrong, I moved my eyes here. Forest Wood, the preliminary plat, and this is on the updated list that Mr. Poche provided. Preliminary plat was improved to February of last year. Lake at West Creek, that was approved in September of 18, and then the Villas at Rosewood was approved in October. So everything that's on the list here, other than Ascension Business Park, that there's just been a preliminary plat approval, is less than a year old, and I'm assuming that those developers are working through the stages after preliminary plat.
Yes, I mean, one of the questions that came up, and we got with Cody, the council, and basically until we came to this meeting and you guys decided what you wanted to do with that ordinance as far as the 6 months for the final plat and the construction documents, then we're going to move forward. Typically, we had looked at construction starting within 2 years, and that's what we focused on. But the code does say that if they haven't submitted construction documents within 6 months, then you have the right to rescind the preliminary plat. So what we're going to do is we're going to notify all of these people so that next month, if they have not submitted their construction documents and their preliminary plat approval is more than 6 months old, then they're going to need to come in front of you and explain why, and either ask for an extension or let you guys know what they're going to do.
Well, the code doesn't require us, we can exercise the
Correct.
authority if we choose to.
Correct.
But we're not, it's not like the Ascension Business Park on the 2-year deadline, which is a hard deadline in case unless we continue it.
Correct.
The 6 month is kind of a review process. I would feel, I think the better procedure is to have the people who are behind 6 months or more than 6 months after preliminary plat approval to come before us. And I don't know what the rest of the commission, before we just revoke or consider revoking their preliminary plat, because
yes, that's what
there may be explanations that we don't know about, and I don't think that's a fair system of doing things.
I would agree, but I also don't want to miss the opportunity to recapture them and say, I need at least an updated traffic report that complies with today's standards. If I can capture that, particularly the ones that were done under the old traffic methodology.
I think you would have to decide whether you wanted to rescind the plat, and if they had to come back in front of you, then they would have to provide you an updated traffic study.
Right.
But if you just let them extend what they have, I don't think you can require them to provide you an updated traffic study. Because they already have preliminary plat approval.
So we could rescind an approved plat, and then they would have to resubmit with new traffic study, or...
Or we could just simply say, if you don't have a new traffic study in 30 days, we're going to rescind it.
Unless they turn around and then they just submit their construction documents at that point,
Well, no,
and then they've complied.
Mr. Chesson.
I'm sorry, did you not hear
If
me?
you rescind a preliminary plat, basically they have to start over again
Right.
from the
Right.
very
Well-
beginning, and they'll have to submit a new application. They'll have to go through the entire approval process at that point in time.
I think I'd like to hear from legal what we can do with the traffic. If we have to rescind it in order to require the traffic, that changes things. But if it gives us an opportunity to ask for the traffic and force them to comply with it, then it's a valuable.
I don't think you can without rescinding the plan, without rescinding it, because I don't know that you have the discretion to do anything other than rescind for under age. And then at that point, if you rescind it, like Jerome said, they'd have to come back new. I don't think you can get them in front of you and say, well, I'm going to require you to submit one now. And if you give them an extra 30 days at that point, all they have to do is submit some construction documents, and then you lose the authority to rescind. So you'd have to do it at that 6 month mark.
I think
But either way, you would need to give the people an opportunity to address the
I think
commission.
that consulting legal is appropriate. I would also like to establish some procedure for this. And I'm not going to accuse anybody on this commission, but the discretion to withdraw or to rescind a preliminary plat for the purpose of adding more conditions that weren't contemplated initially could lead to abuse of the process.
Well, I would agree.
And I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about people who may come after me. And I think, in all fairness, if somebody has done work under in good faith under the conditions that were set upon them initially, it would be inherently unfair to change those conditions because of circumstances that were uncontrolled over a 6-month time period, which seems relatively brief on that. So I would like to incorporate with that some procedure for doing that before we exercise that authority, because that authority seems very broad and pervasive. So
Can I ask staff a question about I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 that Matt referenced earlier that are beyond the 6 months with nothing being submitted?
No, they were all from last year, not all of them.
Not all of them were 6 months.
No, there was, so the one, Christie Place, which was May, would that be beyond 6 months?
That would be beyond 6.
Christie Place and Forest Wood.
are the only
Forest
two.
Wood, the others were at the end of the year last year.
Okay.
I mean, September, November, and October.
So at this point, we're really only talking about 2, Christie Place and Forest Wood. Have either of those been in contact with y'all since preliminary approval to let you know where they are in the process?
No, not to my knowledge. But we can certainly find out. We'll get with them and tell them they need to come here next month and go over that with you guys.
I'd also like to get something from legal about the authority that we have
Right.
if we rescind, because I'm not comfortable. 2 years is one thing, but 6 months to rescind it and say, oh, well, now we're just going to apply new laws to you. It's kind of like it's a hybrid. It's not. I'm not going to use that word because people misquote me and then call me an idiot, which may be available, but I just don't think that's fair. So, Mr. Furman.
Yes, are there certain points to which the planning department sends communication out to these developers to, obviously they have a schedule in advance of when they're supposed to submit plats and whatever, but as far as communicating back, saying we haven't heard from you and your preliminary plat or whatever is due in 30 days, anything like that goes out from the planning department?
There has been no communication with him. They know basically the code, what the codes are,
Yeah.
what the code is.
So once they leave with the timeframes that you submit at the beginning of the process, they just have to
Yeah, this is
follow
kind of a
that.
new process for us, with your recommendations. So, number one, we'll get with legal, basically in terms of what you guys are asking for. And secondly, if you feel it's appropriate that we're getting close to that deadline in 6 months, we can certainly contact them and let them know. I think there are a couple of engineers who do, 95% of the work in the parish, and they certainly know the process.
Yeah, they know the process. They should be aware, but.
Right.
I think it's also important to include on this, if there is any subdivision, for example, Oak Lane, where there's major things going on with other entities that have jurisdiction. In Oak Lane, they had to deal with the city and the development on the other side of Highway 44 is escaping me. Conway. And the roundabout issue, and with DOT and all of that. If those factors are pervading into this, that's something that I would like included on this list as well.
Okay.
And, I mean, if it's a normal process subdivision, we don't need to get too far afield on it, but we've put conditions on several subdivisions this year, particularly as it pertains to road widening. For example, in, off of, was it St. James Place? Was that, we required the road to be widened before that. If DOTD is getting involved in that and they're making deals with DOTD, I'd like to know about that as it goes along, so it doesn't come to us in 2 years and they say, oh, well, we made this deal with DOTD and we thought that took care of what your condition was, because it may or may not, and that's, I think, important.
We will make note of that for you.
Okay. I also think that the publication of this list to the public is appropriate, as is having this discussion now in terms of this meeting, as opposed to at the end of the agenda, particularly long agendas like we had last month where everybody's really tired and would like to go home and not have this discussion while we're fresh and that there's more people here that are paying attention to it. So, any other comments for this from the commission? All right. Moving on to item number 10 on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to address you based on the reports.
Yes.
I'd just like to notify the commission that the parish council adopted in its last meeting a requirement that there's to be no conditions that are to be placed on the approval of a final plat. That language will appear in the code. We had not placed any conditions on final plats. All the conditions are typically placed on preliminary plats. But that section of the code has been modified, and it will become part of our code.
Does that include punch list items?
No, it does not. It does not.
So anything that is conditioned on the final plat would be characterized as a punch list item?
Correct.
Or maybe restate, it has to be in the nature of a punch list item before it can be presented to us?
Correct. Okay. And just for clarification, a final plat does not become a legal document until you have signed it as chairman and it's been recorded at the parish. So typically, we'll have the final plat approved on the consent calendar, like we have started to do. And once the punch list items have been completed and all incomplete, and we have re-inspected the project, will we have you sign the plat and recorded. So once it's recorded at the parish, then they become legal lots and they can start pulling building permits. But not until then, and not until you have signed it and it's been recorded, does it become a legal plat. So at that point, there are no conditions outstanding on the project. All right.
Excellent. All right, number 10 on the agenda is the approval or denial of the minutes and written decisions of the December 12th, 2018 meeting of the Planning Commission. Each of you should have received that at your station tonight, so I'm sure you've had, I know some have, because you've already commented to me about some of the things. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Chesson, second by Mr. Dumas. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, number 11 is the consent agenda. We have 3 affidavits of mortgage declaration. 11A is the affidavit of mortgage declaration for the Mary Freelou Burke property tract B1A, 18103 Muddy Creek Road in Prairieville. Item number 11B is an affidavit of mortgage declaration for the Melissa Freelou Walton property tract B1B, 18107 Muddy Creek Road in Prairieville. And item number 11C is affidavit of mortgage declaration for the Tom Pertreat property tract TP 237458 or 4 Cornerview Road, Geismar, Louisiana. Do I have a hearing on, or a motion on that?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Mr. Furman, second by Mr. Chasson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 12, public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. The Jerome Duplessis property, lots D6A1A and D6A1B. That's Earls and Associates. Mr. Falgout, good evening. Happy New Year to you.
James Falgout, representing Earls and Associates and Lachey property, asking the commission for approval and division.
Staff.
And comments have been addressed, and the property meets the conditions of the code.
All right. We will open a public hearing on this issue. Ms. Stacy, has anyone signed up to speak on this issue? We will close the public hearing because no one has signed up to speak. Any questions, comments, or a motion by the commission?
Move we approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Furman, second by Mr. Dumas. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The preliminary plat is approved. Thank you, sir. All right, and now, obviously, the item that everybody else is here on tonight is a public hearing to approve or deny the following preliminary plats. Item 13A is the Pelican Point Golf Community Major Revision Large-Scale Development Master Plan by Ferris Engineering and Surveying LLC. Before we begin the hearing on this, I will state that, and I've notified the commission and Mr. Fournier that I have a conflict of interest in hearing this, and therefore I will withdraw myself from any consideration and comments on this matter other than my ministerial tasks of running the hearing as chairman of the commission. Also, I would say to all of you who have signed up to speak on this, you will all get your opportunity if you desire. We will call you up one by one. You notice there's a clock in front of me, and there's also a clock in front of the podium. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. There's a lot of you, so if y'all want to speak and we didn't limit you, we'd be here all night long. So with that being said, sir, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. Chris Ferris, Ferris Engineering. Here to request the approval of the preliminary plat revision. I'm happy to elaborate on any of the changes if needed. I'm happy to elaborate on any of the changes if needed.
All right. Staff, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, in your staff report, there are several items. There are two, I guess, layers of items. The first set of items, numbered 1 through 7, are the specific changes that the developer has requested per each tract on the master plan. The second area, or the second grouping, is 4, and those are basically housekeeping changes that were done as preliminary plats for other portions were approved up through the years, changing FEMA map and whatnot. What we would like to see is for the commission and the developer to address each individual item as it comes up. And when you vote to make a motion, when you vote to approve or deny, you either condition it, approve it, or deny it based on each individual request that's made, because we want to try to cover every item as it comes up on the plan and address each one of them individually so that there's no question about what came before you, what was discussed, what was approved, what was not approved.
All right. Where are the,
First
I see.
page.
If I may.
So there's the 4, you're asking us to take up one by one the 4 items at the bottom of the first page of your report?
Well, the 4 items there are of a general nature, and they don't need to be addressed individually. Those are just housekeeping items that the developer and the consultant.
It's the first 7?
It's the first 7 that are the specific requests of the developer for changes on the plan.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Let me get this straight. The second group, 4 items, those are items that have already been changed on the map and they were done administratively, and really they don't require our action.
Correct.
Right. The other 7 items, I don't know that I can subscribe to the theory that we're going to take each one of them individually. Every one of them, most of them are a major change to the original concept plan that predates any ordinance. And I think it's very difficult, at least it's very difficult for me to contemplate changing something that is, where we're going to take open space and convert it to residential space or developable land, or take residential lands and convert it to commercial lands, or areas that were common areas to convert it to commercial areas and expand the commercial areas without looking at revised traffic and revised drainage and and any other factor in here. And I think it's premature for us to take action on this without that. And I think we need to see a revised traffic report, and a revised drainage, because we're gonna generate a lot more, a more non-pervious area as a result of some of these approvals. We're gonna possibly create more driveways on 44, and I want to know, we need to really make sure that some of these commercial parcels have internal circulation rather than end up with a scenario like we have in 73, where we've got all of these little parcels and one driveway right after another, on 73, which is dangerous and problematic to manage the traffic.
Yeah, I mean,
so how to do all of this without any of that information, with all due respect, is premature.
Well, that's fine, and that's perfectly understandable. There are going to be items that you're going to address from a global nature, but there are also specific tracts on the master plan that I think, or we think need to be addressed individually on each one of its merits, so that if you do 1 through 3 or 2 or 3 of them and you approve them, you deny some of them and condition others, that's fine, and we understand that there are going to be global requirements and requests as far as drainage and traffic and things of that nature, but it's our opinion that it needs to be as specific as possible. If y'all have the leeway to require what you want from the developer so that you're satisfied that the plan meets whatever conditions you set forth from it. So that leeway is yours.
Okay, well, for me, it starts with item 1, goes all the way through number 7. None of those, I think, can be considered without a revised traffic, revised drainage plan, and more specifications. We have a proposed residential parcel that doesn't identify what it is, or how many units are going to be in there like the rest of the parcels in the development. So for me, this thing needs a lot more information, in the submittal for us to take any action on.
Right. I mean,
That applies to all of them.
I would recommend you can address that with the consultant and tell him what you're going to require him to.
He's
to,
there.
to
He's
do.
hearing it. I mean, I'm just telling you. I think you need to come back with a lot more information.
Well, we understand that. This is just the preliminary plat, though. It will have to go back through the construction document and permitting process. and
Understood.
it'll thoroughly be vetted, drainage and traffic as well. The latest revision was back in 2005, and it was approval of 84 townhome units in this similar area that's shown in green, where we're doing these 77 lots. We're essentially taking the same number of lots. We're not adding any.
Understood.
And we're basically lessening the density. We're moving 7 of the approved townhomes over to the clubhouse where they're a little more conducive. We'd be adding landscape buffer between the detached and the new townhomes. And then the other items that are up front along 44 were previously undesignated as commercial. That's the most conducive for Highway 44. The RV and boat storage we're just requesting that it be allowed to be considered as condo or commercial. There's no plans yet as to what they are, but again, this is just preliminary.
Right, but for that parcel, it's got the 77 lots. You are taking some of the golf course property and converting it to residential.
Not any that wasn't previously considered.
The maps that we saw showed it as it's incorporating some of the golf course.
And really, to elaborate on this portion that's old golf course is future development. That is unused golf course, and so
it may be unused, but in the concept plan, it's open space.
Well, it's still open space.
Well,
because it's not being developed right now, and we would do another preliminary plat revision to show what that would be designed as in the future. But since it is not a golf course anymore, we revised it to not show golf course because that's not what it is.
Well, but in the current approved concept plan, it is open space or a golf course or whatever it is, but it's open space.
And
it's not a residential tract.
It's still not a residential tract. It's open space.
Well, you're showing it in the new concept plan as a residential tract.
No, we're not. We're showing it as open space. It may be slated for future development, but as of now, it's still open space. It's still in the open space calculations.
The orange section you're
That's
talking
the
about?
orange section.
Yes.
Well,
I can't read what it says.
Then I suggest that you revert it back to open space and leave it as that and don't designate a tract. But to me, that plan designates us approving something there in the future. And before I can support that, I need to know what it is. To me, it's that simple.
That's fine. We don't have anything planned for this. This was just strictly because it was a golf course. It's not anymore, and we didn't want to call it golf course anymore. So.
Well, again, I just need more information.
Certainly.
I can't in good faith address any of those 7 items without more information. The only thing on here that I don't think needs a whole lot of additional review, to be honest with you, is the proposed sales office in that little tract of land right next to the entry gate. I mean, to me, that one makes sense. The only item that, to me, it's the simplest one of them all is that proposed sales office by the entry gate. I mean, that's an internal circulation thing. It's, you've already got a sales office, and my understanding is correct, is you're simply moving it there.
No, it would be for a second office.
Oh, it'd be a second office?
Yes.
It's just not a lot of detail.
Yeah, there's just a lot of
It's-
detail.
It's just all general. We have no detail.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
this
you.
is, this is essentially a concept plan. It's like a rezoning. It's not meant to be detailed.
I got to be honest with you. I mean, when I worked very hard with the prior administration to get the PUD, okay? And we actually modeled it, and we said, wow, we need to do this because we wanted to encourage more developments like Pelican Point, okay? Unfortunately, it was abused, okay? It wasn't used for what it was supposed to be used for, and a lot of people took a dislike for that provision of the code, okay? If I were going to level Pelican Point, it is a traditional planned unit development. It's a PUD, okay? It's not zone PUD, but the reality of it is that we need more information, in order to properly address this concept plan and address the impact that it could potentially generate.
But I don't think y'all understand. We've got the 84 townhomes approved. We're trying to improve this and not do all these townhomes in the back. We're asking for your approval to do this. And
I can't approve this plan as it is. If you wanna come back with a concept plan that just have that, and tell me that you're not gonna convert part of the prior existing golf course into a residential parcel, then I'm good with it. I see what you're doing on that particular parcel, but this thing is too complicated. I would ask you to bring a revised traffic and everything. My view of what you've got vested, right, is what you've got on the concept plan. Nothing else. I mean, your table, if you tell me but we're reducing density, your table for that is that density on the existing parcels that you have. Creating a new parcel in my opinion, is outside of that vesting. So I'll go back to my issue. Get a traffic study based on today's standards and a drainage study based on today's standards, and bring it back, and maybe all of this can be resolved real quickly. But without that, I don't see how I mean, in all fairness, this is too vague.
It's a concept plan.
I understand it's a concept plan. If you were a PUD, you'd have all of that information, but you're not a PUD. And that's the only place in the code where we have a concept plan.
Happy to answer any other questions.
Any other questions before we get to the public hearing on this?
I think Julio covered most of mine, so.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Ms. Stacy, how many people have signed up to speak on this? I'm sorry?
Like 11?
Okay. Let's call the first person up, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a letter from Chairman, Councilmember Bill Dawson, whose district this lies, and he would like me to read that into the record.
We'll do that after the public hearing.
Okay, sounds good.
Mike Ulmer?
Mr. Ulmer, Mike Ulmer? I'm sorry, sir?
He's not going to speak.
Okay, thank you. I just couldn't hear you from the back. And you don't even have a microphone, so. Next one.
Craig Nagden?
Mr. Nagden?
Chairman, my name is Craig Naden. I live in the green section of Pelican Point, and I agree with the gentleman here that we need to consider Mr. Dawson's memo to the council. I also agree with Mr. Dumas that some of the things we need to do before some of these things are approved are have a drainage study. Back in May of 2013, we had major flooding in both the green section and Pelican Point where we could not get in or out of the green section. We addressed that with Mr. Bill Rue of the DOTT, and he corrected some of the drainage issues. The M1B1A, which is the boat storage yard, we have a drained area in that yard that if there is condos and so forth, it may stop the drainage from greens again, okay? We had a lot of water coming across Highway 22 and going into the green section, which was helping flooding. The water in the greens goes into Pelican Point proper. Mr. Bill Rue diverted that to the, going towards the Word and the Panama Canal. With the Plantation Commons, we also have a drainage ditch that goes along the back fence of the greens into this drainage ditch that was corrected by Mr. Bill Rue. We haven't had any major flooding where we couldn't egress into our Greens subdivision since Mr. Rue corrected that. And we don't want to make sure that this condos or whatever you have going into that M1B1A doesn't compromise the existing drainage where we have had correction before. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Skipper. Skipper McInnes.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes, my name is Skipper McInnes. I appreciate y'all hearing us tonight. Oh, I'm sorry. I got hearing aids now, so I don't need them. I wanted to ask the council to consider the fact that if I understand it right, townhomes have already been approved for most of the section of land that's being developed. If the developer has to go back and build the townhomes, I think it'll lower the value of the homes in Pelican Point instead of raising it. And I would not want to put him in a position of either going with already been approved, which is the townhomes, or building $500,000 homes in the back of the neighborhood, which I think would enhance everybody's property value. So for the sake of building and our property value up, I hope the board will consider the fact that the developer's in the spot now where, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's already been approved for townhomes on a section of this land. If he takes a little extra land and builds the same amount of homes, he's actually lowering the per acre amount of homes on each land. Instead of making it more dense, he's making it less dense. I realize that there is a little bit of extra land involved, but if it enhances our value in the neighborhood, if it enhances the greens in the fact that they'll have nice homes back there instead of, nothing against townhomes, but given the two choices, I personally would prefer to see homes built there, and I hope that the board will not force him into a situation where, the restraints are that he ends up just better off building what's already been approved. I hope you'll approve that the homes can be built so that we can enhance the value of the property of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Kelly.
Ms. Kelly.
Good evening. I have more questions than a comment for you, but I live in the Greens. I'm concerned about that area that is proposed. It's the RV, has been the boatyard, RV yard, and it's proposed to change it to condos or commercial. I have concerns about the sewer there, and I'm concerned if indeed the sewer connects to anything in the Greens. And my second question has to do with the streets in the new proposed areas. Will those be public streets or private streets? My hope is that they will be public streets. Living in the Greens with private streets, we have major problems to maintain those in proper order. So those two areas I would ask the commission to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Charles Huggins.
Mr. Huggins.
Good evening. My name is Charles Huggins. I live in the Greens of Pelican Point. And the issues brought up, or has been made already, about Mr. Diaz already having the ability to put 84 townhouses back, or condos, whatever. And that can be done, I guess, with a new drainage plan or whatever he comes up with tomorrow, in theory, with no upscale look at the traffic situation. And in my opinion, the traffic's going to be the same, whether it's 83 houses or 83 condos or 83 townhouses. So that part of it's not going to change no matter what the scheme is. But, and if, in fact, the homes are approved, and that requires the revision and resubmission of the drainage plan. The drainage is our biggest concern, honestly. The houses, I think they will be a benefit to all of Pelican Point as far as something being built back there. Do we want $200,000 townhouses or $450,000 homes? Obviously, for our personal benefit in that, it's the homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
James Clinton.
Mr. Chairman, committee, my comments are in line with, sorry. My name is James Clinton. I live in the Greens also, and my comments are in concert with those who have spoken about the Greens already. We do have a beautiful community, and any change whatsoever would take away some of what we already experience there. Being senior citizens, we believe that our community should remain one where we can live in peace and enjoy what the community offers to us. And we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Bob Nance.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dumas, I agree with everything you said this for a change. Julio and I were on the planning commission a long time ago together, and we were usually on the opposite sides of things. Julio is right about one thing about the old golf course. Where do you stop? We don't want to end up like Shenandoah or several other subdivisions in Baton Rouge. So I'm going to skip on to the other thing that is bothering everybody, is that boat storage, RV storage. I don't have any opposition to it if it's accessed from Highway 44. Because that's the only way they can do commercial there. That's a Courtyard Drive at that point is private, so he cannot put commercial in that. He could put condos, but they have to be owner occupied. There again, that's not specified. So it needs to go back to the drawing board and let him reconsider things. Forget about the future development of the old golf course. That's green space or whatever you want to call it. Because first thing you know, I live on hole number 3. I don't want suddenly to have townhomes in the back of my house. With that said, I think y'all are going to do the right thing and send it back to Mr. Diaz for reconsideration. Thank you.
Beverly Barre.
Thank you, Ms. Barre. She deferred her time. Is that it?
Mm-mm. Cindy Olivier.
Ms. Barre is a former commissioner,
Oliver.
too.
Hi, I'm Cindy Olivier. I also live in the Greens, and I live very close to that RV storage lot area that's been discussed. We are very concerned with that being changed to commercial or condo or whatever, since it's not even specified. Drainage is a big issue in that particular area. If it's rezoned as commercial, what is he going to put there? Is it going to be another dollar store? Is it going to be a fast food place that we're going to be having to live with the smell of the food and the grease or whatever? Is it going to be condos? We don't know. We're concerned with the drainage. We're concerned with noise. If it is commercial, we just don't know what that's going to be. When we bought into the Greens, we were told that that was a storage area and that at one time residents were allowed to store boats or RVs or what have you there. But, oh, don't worry, it's only being used for the developers' storage of their materials and machinery. So that's what we bought into. And now he's looking at changing it to something different. We're opposed to it, and our concern, again, mainly is the drainage, the traffic, and the noise, or whatever it brings to us. So we would ask that that be not allowed and keep our community as nice as it is. Thank y'all.
Thank you, ma'am.
William Waymere.
Mr. Waymere.
Hello, my name is Bill Waymire. I've lived in Pelican Point Commons for 16 years and 1 month now. Have my neighbor Charles Wilson with me, and I'm going to speak fast, and then he's got a few comments. My comments deal with, I heard people talk about drainage. In Pelican Isle Commons right now, the area between the current townhomes along Champions Tiff to Panama Canal, that what I call the pasture land, vacant land, floods every time we have a heavy thunderstorm. When you can see level of Panama Canal rise and see stuff drifting down range, it floods. So it's like a flood barrier to us in the common townhomes now. And just imagine if they build something else there. Condos to me means that we get a whole different element. We are homeowners as residents of townhomes. These people can have time sharing. They can have anybody they want come in and live. That's in violation of our bylaws and restriction in Pelican Point. You have to be a homeowner to live there. The builder has not developed that area in Pelican Isle Commons 2 for 16 plus years. As I said, I've been there. He's tried to do something. It's always been voted down, so stay with the original plan by this parish council. You're going to have a problem with population and traffic density issues if he builds many more townhomes even. They extend my road, driver's lane, then that's going to make it very difficult for residents to check their mailbox. The sewer service is going to have to be renovated for both drainage, as people have talked about, and for personal use. Charles.
Yes, good evening. I'm Charles Wilson. I'm right on Champion Tiff Drive. I want to just go back, if I can, just to bring a few things up. This was discussed actually about 3 years ago. We had another planning commission chairperson that covered all these aspects in a sense as far as what he wants to do over on our side. On Champion Tiff Drive in back of my property and on the side of my property, the whole thing. Now, I don't know whether you know it or whether somebody's read it, but they probably can go back because it was entered on the plot plan, okay, twice by the Planning Commission chairperson, okay, that there should be no more building in a sense, okay, as far as in the back of all of our properties. I understand he wants to put, build about 25?
Yeah.
He wants to put 25 townhomes in back of our properties, okay? But this was voted down in a sense before. I mean, we had 3 times as many people that we have up here tonight. Okay, now like I say that's one of the major things at this point.
Since both of y'all were up here, I'll give you a little bit more time to.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, now, but you can go back to the prior planning commission chairperson, okay, because he had, in a sense, he had his secretary, matter of fact, go over the same evening of the meeting and bring back the plot plans. And he signed the plot plans twice. And he said what the situation was going to be a density problem. traffic problem, density problem, and everything, okay, within our neighborhood. And there's several people over there in our neighborhood talking about it too. You know, some of them, you know, couldn't get here or whatever, but, you know, we're definitely opposed to it. And hey, if we have to, other words, fight it in whatever way, that's what we're going to do. We got a group of people and we're not going to go for it because it's not right in the sense, and, you know, I mean, he wants to put, before he was talking about putting streets all out, you know, and then a canal is back there. He wants to put properties all back where the canal is at. Okay, our property could possibly flood. So, you know, I'm just saying, like, you know, truthfully enough, I'm just asking you to consider this, because last time also he had 3 lawyers. He had 3 lawyers. He had 2 males and 1 lady. And what they did was they set the lady up in a sense. Okay, it was this is true. This is true. This is true. He set the lady. This one lady, as a matter of fact, I felt sorry for her because the guys didn't show up. Okay, and what happened was, I mean, you can go back and check the minutes. I want you to check the notes on this here. The lady, in other words, she was there all by herself. Okay, and she was told, in a sense, you know, have Mr. Diaz not to bring this back. Because we had an overflow crowd on this here. So I'm just thinking, I'm just hoping that, you know.
The first time, this was either 05, I think early 05, that was brought up.
Right, yeah, like Bill was saying, I think it was 05, but you can go back in the minutes in a sense. I know the man that was the planning commission chairperson, he's still here. I've seen him a couple times in the community.
So I gave you some extra time because you were both up there, but you need to wrap up, please,
okay,
if you could.
Yeah, I'm done. I mean, that's the main thing I wanted to express this evening, okay?
Okay,
You know,
thank you, sir.
Is that?
Christina Guidry.
Ms. Tina Guidry? Ms. Tina Guidry, going once, going twice. All right, moving on to the next one.
Ronald Whitmere.
Good evening. My name is Ronald Whitmer. I am a resident of the Greens. My question relates to drainage, and it's a rather simple question, but one that has arisen because of some observations I've made in some other development areas here in the parish. So my question is, has the Planning Commission reviewed whether the developers are planning to add fill in order to raise the elevation of the ground upon which the buildings will be constructed? And I ask that question because I've seen some other developments within the parish where fill has been used to raise the elevation, and that raises a severe question for the landowners that are adjacent, because they would then be subject to suffering some flooding as a result of that raised elevation. So I simply raise that as a question that would be entertained as this development project is pursued. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Susan Dupuy.
Thank you, members of the commission. Sue Dupuy, my husband and I live on Bo Douglas Avenue in Pelican Point. I had prepared some questions per the request of the Pelican Homeowner Association, and then they said, oh, you have to go and talk. So if you don't mind, could I just hand this over to you all? And
Absolutely. We'll put that in.
I'll read it.
You can put it up. Why don't you put it up on the Elmo right there so we can see it on the screen?
Right here?
Yes.
Okay. What else did I do? What time's going?
Marshall, can you activate the overhead?
We're having it activated.
Okay. Our main concern we saw in the plot plan is that that was attached to the agenda. There's a future proposed third gated entrance and exit from, you want me to put it on here? From Highway 44
through the residential lot 99 in Pelican Point to Bo Douglas Avenue in Pelican Point. The entrance is immediately next to a proposed commercial development on Highway 44 called The Village. Although this third entrance wasn't highlighted on the agenda, we felt it would be affected by the decision for the village. So we wanted to know, we had a question that, had the third entrance already been approved by the commission or anyone else in authority? Because that was a surprise for us when we saw that third entrance. And so that was our first question. And I said if it was, we have some, real concerns, the ones that are directly affected by that new entrance, and we would respectfully request that the commission allow the public to present further concerns. I mean, this was a real quick thing we put together. We're concerned about safety, with security, the maintenance of a private road, increased traffic, residents' good faith understanding that a residential home would be built on Lot 99. That's some of the concerns we have right now. And it's also our understanding that if the entrance road is a parish road versus a private road, there cannot be any type of gate or entrance barrier. That's what we have always been told. And if the answer is no, where this entrance has not been approved, when will this proposed third entrance come up again to the commission for public comment? And also, if the commission approves the commercial development, the village, which is supposedly on the agenda, does that mean the third entrance is automatically approved? We just have a lot of questions, and we're really concerned. I have 8 seconds left. I would not have bought a home, my husband and I, had I known that there was an entrance coming in on Bo Douglas.
Thank you, ma'am. Perfect. And you can submit those questions. We'll put those in the record. You can give them to Mr.
You gave her some copies.
You have it? Okay. Anyone else?
I have them, but they're not speaking.
Okay. That's it then? All right. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this matter. Questions, comments, and/or a motion by the commission?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to read.
Before we do that, yes. You have a letter from Mr. Dawson.
Right, exactly. I have an email that was sent to me and to you and members of the Planning Commission, along with some others, from Council Member Bill Dawson. This is in reference to item 13
Please
on
speak
Wednesday.
into the, speak closer.
All right, I'm trying again.
Just to preface this is a letter from Bill Dawson sent to Mr. Fournier and myself today.
All right, this is in reference to item 13 on Wednesday's agenda regarding the approval of a preliminary plat for the major revision to Pelican Point. I'm opposed to approval as submitted for the reasons below. Number one, there was no drainage study done on this revision. The stated reason is that the land use is consistent with previously approved studies. There have been changes to the standards for our drainage studies since the last study was done, and we should incorporate these new standards. Additionally, there are more rooftops on this revision than before. We should require a new drainage study. Number two, there was no new traffic impact study done for this revision. Just like the item above, the standards for traffic studies in Ascension Parish was modified recently by the council. We should require a new traffic study. Number three, only requirements of large-scale development, Appendix 6, Subdivision Regulations 17-4021 states, the standards and requirements of these regulations may be modified by the Planning Commission in the case of a plan and program for a new town, a complete community, or a neighborhood unit, which in the judgment of the Planning Commission provide adequate public spaces and improvements for circulation, recreation, light, air, and service needs of the tract when fully developed and populated, and which also provide such covenants and other legal provisions as will assure conformity to and achievement of the plan. This revision diminishes substantially the amount of public spaces in the development. A very large amount of land in the subdivision in the northwest corner is being changed from golf course to future development. A rough estimate is that this accounts for about 10% of the total land in the development. There are additional reductions in public space in the southwest corner where the new residential units are going. There's an additional reduction on Highway 44 where this area was dedicated to RV and boat storage for the residents and is now residences. When the current residents bought property in this subdivision, they were given a master plan that outlined all the public spaces that would be in the development, and many bought this property because of this. I think this is why the last sentence in the regulation requires the developer to, quote, provide such covenants and other legal provisions as will assure conformity to and achievement of the plan, end quote. Because of the above reasons, I urge the commissioners not to approve this preliminary plat as submitted. William C. Dawson, Council District 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fournier. Any questions, comments, and/or a motion by the commission?
Well, do we need to make a motion to defer this thing for 30 days or 60 days or?
I don't think so. I think we can just vote on it.
Make a motion to do whatever you like to do.
I did have a question for, yeah, I just had a question I was curious about, because there's some discussion about changing what's already been approved as townhomes to houses. I think some of the people had mentioned that. When I look at these, which of these 7 items, sorry, a couple of the people who spoke said something about changing what had previously been approved as townhouses to houses, and I don't see where that's one of these 7 items on here. Which one of those 7 is that?
If I may, that's the one, if you look at your drawing, it's the orange parcel that is in the upper left-hand corner.
So it's going from
This area right here,
So it's going from the yellow townhouses to the orange houses,
with one exception.
with the exception is it's adding the dog leg to the right.
It's adding
Yes.
a portion of the golf course, correct, which is triggering them to modify, correct.
All right, and I'm still confused as to which of the 7 enumerated items that is, because every time I look, everything on here that talks about houses talks about converting condos to townhouses or storage to condos. I don't see anything on here in any of these 7 enumerated items that says they're converting houses, that they're converting townhomes to houses.
I think that's number 1, but I'm not sure.
Well, except that number 1 says that it's revise it from condos to townhomes. It doesn't say it's converting it to, in theory, I have no, but that's not what it says on the plat.
Well, it kind, I mean,
The other way around, the Pelican Point Builders, whatever, who made this proposal, they want to change the name townhome to condo. And that's what they've been after for a long time, at least in my area, since 2007. They've been voted down every time because the council has advised them to go to the original plan. Thank you.
I mean, either way, in theory, if we were taking just the little strip that's already approved for townhouses, for $200,000 townhouses, and converting them to $500,000, $600,000 homes, as someone suggested, I think that would be okay. But you're adding additional land. You've got a bunch of areas that he's wanting to change the designation of with no plan in place.
Right.
So I agree, but there was some discussion of, somebody mentioned converting some townhouses to less dense resident, but more expensive residential property. I don't see where that's on here.
Well, I think it actually is number 1. I think I just made a mistake and didn't add that they're actually single-family detached. They're single-family detached on this Plantation Commons.
It's hard to hear when
if you look at the
mumbling.
lots,
Let
they're
man
not,
speak.
those aren't condo lots. It was a mistake. I apologize. I'm not trying to get anything over on anybody. I think that is the big thing for us, though. I think I've heard a lot of comments about the RV boat storage changing. I think we're more than willing to table that, if that's going to derail this. And save it for a later date, more discussion, more design, more discussion, whatever needs to be done. The biggest one that we were coming in for, and originally was what we had proposed as the only change was this Plantation Commons, what's shown in green, converting from the townhomes to single-family residential and moving the remaining 7 of those already approved townhomes to the clubhouse area.
Okay, so
was the big thing.
let me just say this to you. I agree with you, changing those
Condos?
condos
Townhomes?
to to the single-family detached. For me, that makes sense, provided it stays reasonably within the confines of the residential parcel that you have today. But you're also taking up a piece of the golf course. So if you want to limit it to the real estate that you have today in the parcel, to start with, and then come back with traffic reports and drainage and all that other stuff to review the rest of it, I think that's a reasonable request. But I have a problem with changing open space to residential at this time without an analysis of the whole thing.
And you've got to also consider that even with this whole development with proposed 120 1,020 lots, we still have 53% plus in green space.
Okay, but let me try to this concept on you. The vesting of your density is based on the residential tracts that you have today. It doesn't include the golf course property or the other open space. When you start creating new parcels of land, that density that you think is vested, it's subject to consideration because you don't have those residential parcels today. They are open space on the concept plan. And that's what's vested. You're asking us to approve, I'll be blunt, you're asking us to approve a land use in the conservation district, okay, based on a concept plan, and today that land is open space. I can't do that without the right analysis. I gotta have the right documentation to support that. And to take your table and say, oh, I'm vested for those units. Yeah, you're vested for those units in the residential parcels that you have today, not expanded residential parcels, not new residential parcels.
But just in this proposed area, the density went down from over 4 to a little over 3.
I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, if you want to split it and only get approval for the portion that is currently a residential parcel, I can support that. That's legitimate. That's reasonable. It's an existing residential parcel. You just want to change the unit count and you want to change the use from one to the other and it's still consistent with it. That's very reasonable. But to change the golf course property to a residential parcel, to me, that's a completely different issue. That opens up a whole Pandora's box of other issues. But if you want to do that, I'm all over that one. I can deal with that one.
Mr. Chairman.
And then you can come back later for the rest of it.
You can have a word in now.
I'm sorry.
If Mr. Dumas is done.
I'll take a break.
I think what you're hearing, sir, is a lot of people have a lot of concern over what you're doing to a development that at the time it was announced and after it was developed, it became the jewel of Ascension Parish in that area. A lot of us in this room can remember when that was a sugarcane field. And a lot of us can remember when ITI had that big sign out there, they want to put a chemical incineration plant out there, which, boy, I'm glad that didn't happen. And we have a nice development in the southern part of Ascension Parish. And we're being very careful. The commissioners here are being very careful with this. And before we make these changes, we want to make sure it fits in the overall concept of what all these residents bought in for. I mean, they bought in to have a certain type of development, and they want to make sure that someone's not going to come in and just mess it up and not continue to be what they had envisioned. So that's what you're hearing here right now. Right. We're not against change. We want to know what the change is, and I don't see enough information here to approve or deny, and I'm not sure I'm crazy about approving a concept. I mean, I'd rather see, meat and potatoes, so to speak. What exactly are you going to do?
Well, and then that will all be vetted in the future. This isn't the final. He can't go build.
I'm not ready to vote on what you're going to do in the future. I want to know what are you going to do, like in the immediate future.
Excuse me, I really need the public to just settle down. I mean, we've had a public hearing, we've had comments. We need to just deliberate this issue and come to a conclusion. So I appreciate if you guys could keep it down. This is the best I can do tonight with the information that I have in front of you, for whatever it's worth. I'm prepared to do that, but that's all I feel comfortable doing. If you want to take that piece of the pie.
And which part was that?
Is to allow the change of unit type in the portion of that parcel, which I don't know what parcel number it is, but the parcel at the southwest corner, okay?
Right.
And limit it to the size and shape of the parcel that exists today, and then you can come back when you have more information, and we can consider the rest of it.
Are you making a motion?
No, I'm asking him if.
I mean, sure. I think the only reason that it's a little farther is because we were trying to match unit for unit on the change.
Understood. So take.
I don't see any problem with it.
I think it needs to go back.
So what you'd be talking about doing is taking that one strip labeled as Plantation Commons in yellow on the original plan, changing just the designation from condo, townhome, whatever it is now, to single-family detached residences. It must fit within that exact same footprint.
Correct.
And.
Well, that's the only thing that I'm prepared to support today.
But is he presenting a specific plan on that?
Well, he is. In
I
that
don't
one,
see a
he's,
specific plan.
well, remember, he's presenting the preliminary of this, and he's going to come back with a full plat.
What can't we just look at it then, when it's a full plat, and what can we do now?
The only thing we're doing now is just telling him that yellow parcel can change to single-family detached housing.
I mean, in light of that, I would prefer that it be deferred.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that it'll work how we need it to.
I think that's the best choice.
Within that.
Okay, well, then you have to
Then
just say.
I request that it be deferred.
All right, we need a motion to accept the deferral.
I move.
Motion by Mr. Furman, second by Mr. Dumas. The developer is removing the item from the agenda to bring it back at a later time. He's asked that it be deferred or removed off the agenda. Mr. Dumas has made a motion to grant that, or Mr. Furman has, Mr. Dumas has seconded. We're about to vote on that motion, so nothing will pass tonight other than we may hear this later. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Hearing none, the chairman does not vote on this. Therefore, the matter is pulled off the docket. Seeing as we've done our staff reports, we are at item number 14 on the agenda.
So moved.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.